Infineon, the king of power semiconductors, was not born a king. It cut off its memory business, cut off its communications business, and bought up the companies it needed. It became king because it rebuilt itself from the ground up. Behind this week's news that 5 Japanese companies made the global top 20, the real question being asked is not Japan's technological strength. It is fragmentation. That is how I see it.
Hello everyone, I'm Ty, with 31 years in the semiconductor industry. Today, using the global power semiconductor rankings as our entry point, I'll explain how Infineon actually became the champion and what is still missing for the Japanese players, despite their genuinely strong technology. By the end of this video, you'll understand the real power map hidden behind the league table and what Japan's true challenge really is. Let's start with an analogy. Imagine a town famous for Western-style cooking, where food lovers gather from all over the world. Every year, this town publishes a ranking of its restaurants. In this year's ranking, 5 long-established Japanese diners made the top 20. The old masters clearly still have their skills. And yet, sitting at the very top of the list is a single specialty restaurant from Europe. Here's the thing. This top-ranked restaurant was not always a famous stew house. It originally split off from a large merchant family as a huge all-purpose eatery that served everything: noodles, sweets, stews, you name it. But trying to carry all of those menus at once meant the business was always financially unstable. So the owner made a series of big decisions. First, he spun off the noodle department, once one of his signature offerings, as a separate shop. That noodle shop later got caught in a brutal price war and went out of business. Next, he let go of the sweets department as well. He narrowed the dish he would bet his restaurant on down to one thing: stew. But he didn't just cut. The owner went out and bought a shop with a master broth maker, a famous side dish specialist, and a young restaurant with innovative cooking techniques, bringing them all into his own kitchen. The result was a specialty house that could serve a complete stew course, from appetizer to main, all under one roof, and customers from around the world began placing their entire orders there. Meanwhile, what about Japan's 5 diners? Each one has a truly superb signature dish, but the 5 operate as completely separate shops, and in some of them, that famous dish is treated as just one item on the menu of a giant inn's dining hall. Customers who want to order a full course inevitably drift toward the specialist, where everything comes from a single kitchen. Now, let's look at how this simplified story is actually playing out in the real industry. Back to reality. In the 2025 ranking of power semiconductor makers by revenue, compiled by the French market research firm Yole Group, 5 Japanese companies made the global top 20. Mitsubishi Electric came in 4th, Fuji Electric 5th, Toshiba 6th, Rohm 8th, and Renesas Electronics 14th. Look at the top 3, and you'll see Western names in a row. Germany's Infineon Technologies in 1st place, America's onsemi in 2nd, and Europe's ST Microelectronics in 3rd. And here's what you shouldn't overlook. 5 Chinese companies also made the top 20. Power semiconductors are no longer a competition between just the West and Japan. The Japanese players' strengths are very clear. Mitsubishi Electric and Fuji Electric are strong in IGBTs, the devices that switch the flow of electric power, while Toshiba stands out in silicon MOSFETs and Rohm in silicon carbide, or SiC. The Chinese players, on the other hand, are expanding their share in areas like SiC wafers and power modules for EVs, backed by massive domestic demand. The market outlook is promising, too. Yole forecasts that the global power electronics market will grow at an average of 7.1% per year from 2025 to 2031, reaching $41.3 billion by 2031. The growth is driven by EVs, industrial motors, renewable energy, energy storage systems, and power supplies for AI data centers. On top of that, wide bandgap semiconductors, SiC and GaN combined, are projected to account for 31% of the entire market by 2031. Now, here's the heart of the matter. This news is usually framed as a story about rankings. Japan is still strong, or China is catching up. But what I really want you to focus on is the history. The fact that Infineon, the company at the top, did not start out anywhere near its current form. Infineon was originally carved out of Germany's Siemens as its semiconductor division, a general-purpose chipmaker that had both memory and communications businesses. It later spun off its DRAM business as a company called Qimonda. Qimonda was, for a time, one of the world's major DRAM makers, but it got caught in a crash in DRAM prices and went bankrupt in 2009. Infineon itself fell into a serious management crisis between 2008 and 2009. Even so, Infineon let go of its communications business too, sharpening its focus, and at the same time, it bought what it needed. It acquired International Rectifier, strong in power supplies and MOSFETs, Cypress, with its automotive microcontrollers, and GaN Systems, which held the new material gallium nitride. Through this cutting and pasting, Infineon rebuilt itself into a company with power semiconductors at its very core. Mitsubishi Electric makes a striking contrast. In 2003, Mitsubishi Electric and Hitachi jointly founded Renesas Technology, spinning off their digital semiconductors, microcontrollers, and system LSI chips. Power semiconductors, however, stayed inside the parent company because they were the heart of its core businesses: factory automation, railways, and electric power equipment. In the early 2000s, when mobile phones and digital consumer electronics were the stars, it was the digital chips that looked like the main characters. Japan's technology is still formidable today. Mitsubishi Electric ranks second in the world in IGBT revenue, right behind Infineon. Fuji Electric is third. Toshiba is third in silicon MOSFETs. Rohm has the largest SiC revenue of any Japanese company, and Renesas is said to be strong in power ICs and control. The problem is that these specialties are scattered across 5 separate companies. What's more, Mitsubishi Electric is a giant conglomerate spanning everything from factory automation to space. So even Japan's top-class power semiconductor business remains just one division within the whole. And here's an even more interesting twist. The moves of Renesas, the company that was spun off. It started out centered on microcontrollers and automotive control, but through its acquisition of Intersil, it took in power and analog technology, and through Transform, it added GaN, and now it has come back into the power business. In 2003, System LSI looked like the star of the show, but in 2026, the role of leading player is going to what seemed unglamorous back then: power semiconductors. So what does this mean for Japan? Among the Chinese players are companies like BYD and CRRC, which keep power semiconductors in-house as the heart of their EVs and trains. In other words, the Mitsubishi Electric model of vertical integration was not a mistake. Holding your key devices inside your own business is still a valid strategy today. The problem, as I see it, is that in Japan, these strengths are scattered across multiple companies, with no cross-cutting alignment between them. What Infineon's history teaches us is this: the king was not born a king. It became king by cutting what needed to be cut, adding what needed to be added, and changing the very shape of the company. The question facing Japan is not simply whether it can expand production. It is whether Japan can reorganize its strong technologies into a form that can compete across the board, from EVs to renewable energy to AI data centers. Let me sum up. In the 2025 Power Semiconductor Rankings, 5 Japanese companies made the global top 20. Infineon, at the top, became king by cutting and pasting its way to a company built around power semiconductors. Japan's challenge is not technology, it is fragmentation. A future that nobody could have predicted in 2003 is now right in front of us. That's all for today. I'll keep bringing you semiconductor news and analysis, so if you found this useful, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. This has been Ty on Semiconductor News Decoded.